Please be seated. About a month ago, the chapel at the Virginia Theological Seminary had a fire and was largely destroyed. It was a horrible event in the life of the seminary, a horrible event in the life of that diocese, where the seminary is so central to the life of the diocese and that community. Can you imagine what it would be like to lose the center of worship, the central gathering place of a community that comes together to celebrate the presence of God, to mark those significant and important moments in life, graduations, weddings, and even funerals. There was a funeral to occur, that was scheduled to occur just a week after the seminary chapel was destroyed. A terrible thing. So I ask your prayers for the Virginia Theological Seminary and the community there, because it's been incredibly disruptive for them, as you might well imagine. I have a very, very close friend who is a student at the Virginia Theological Seminary right now. He's one of those late vocation types. After about 30 years as a banker, he saw the light. You can chuckle just a little more. That's funny. You don't like that? You don't like that? Okay. All right. Fair enough. Fair enough. And has committed himself to serving the church. He is an extraordinary fellow, and I was privileged to be a conversation partner for him as he explored the possibility of God's call. And it turns out that in a church very near the seminary, he's preaching this very morning. This very morning. And this text from the Gospel according to Luke about the destruction of the temple is the one that he is gifted with addressing. Can you imagine living in a community that has just lost the heart of the worshiping community, having to deal with this very text this morning? So he sent me an email about 2 weeks ago sharing his plight with me. And he wanted to know what I thought. What would be my approach? And I didn't answer him very quickly. I took some time and said my prayers about it. And I sent him back a very short response telling him that I was thinking of him and that the seminary was my prayers, and that what I think I would do is I wouldn't try to make sense of what had happened. I think I would concentrate on hope. Because I think there are certain events in the life of a community that you can't really make sense of. I mean, how do you rationalize the loss of something like that? How do we rationalize all the losses that we experience in this life? We put words around them and we try to make sense of them. But come on, at the end of the day, a lot happens to us. A lot that we can't fathom, that we can't make sense of. We just work through them. And we seek to come out on the other side somehow. Sometimes stronger, sometimes better, sometimes affected strangely, in ways that we can't completely understand, and in ways that just become clear with the passage of time. My friend emailed me back and he said he thought that was pretty good advice, and that might be the way that he goes this morning. Jesus talks about loss and fear and destruction in the gospel this morning. But I think not in the ways that we think he speaks about them. You know, Jesus is living in Jerusalem in a time of great unrest and great upheaval. There have been revolutionary efforts, and the Romans have responded brutally to those efforts. And Jesus, no fortune teller, but as someone attuned to the politics of the time, recognizes that that fervor is building once again, that a tide of resistance is starting to swell, and that at some point, someone is going to make that shot once again at the Romans, and he knows what the Romans will do. He knows they will strike with brutality. He knows they could destroy the temple. He knows they could destroy the whole city. And not long after Jesus' life, death, and resurrection, that's precisely what happens. And in his culture, in his time, everyone can feel it. And he's telling them not to be afraid. He's telling them to trust, to have confidence that God is alive and well in the midst of all of it. And that the loss and the grief and the potential destruction and the fear will not carry the day forever. That they're to hold fast and trust that God is with them and that God would always be with them. I think we live in times not that different. Now, granted, we don't and haven't experienced an occupying force per se in our lifetime. We know the changes and chances of this life. We know the wars around the world. We know the contested elections around the world. We know the fears related to deflation, inflation, the price of gold, what the Fed is going to do tomorrow. We know the fear and the anxiety. But the promise of the gospel is just the same. That in the midst of all of this, while the present seems so at risk, the present won't last forever. And that God desires to bring this creation to its perfection, to a time when the lion will rest with the lamb, when real peace will be known, and with God will be with his people in a way more powerful than we apprehend at the moment. So friends, take heart in this crazy, crazy and scary world. Remember that it's always been crazy and scary since the dawn of time. But God's promise endures. God will bring this creation to its perfection. God will welcome us home. God will be with us now and forever.